The episode opens on the distant planet of Terminus, located on the edge of the galaxy. A few children approach a mysterious floating monolith-like structure known as the Vault, which is supposedly protected by spirits. One by one, they try to get close to it but suffer from debilitating hallucinations before they can get too close. Finally, one of them faints and is rescued by a mysterious woman who is known to be the only one who can approach the vault. We are then taken 35 years into the past, to the watery planet of Synax where Gaul's story begins. As a child on Synax, an orthodox planet that punishes anyone found to be studying mathematics or science, Gaul is sent away after solving a 500-year-old equation. She is summoned by Harvey, a professor from the galaxy's capital planet Trantor. Upon reaching there, she is told by Harvey how he has devised a method of seeing the future through mathematical calculations. He explains how the galactic empire is destined to fall into chaos, resulting in the widespread destruction of thousands of worlds. He then informs Gaul that he is to be arrested by the Galactic Emperor's forces for making treasonous claims that disturb the peace. A shocked Gaul barely has time to study Harvey's work before the two are arrested, and she is called in front of a tribunal to disprove the forecast made by him. Gaul, to everyone's surprise, stands by Harvey's predictions and therefore condemns herself to death. However, while they are being taken to their detention center, the planet is attacked, causing widespread devastation and millions of deaths. The Emperor, as a result, changes his mind and decides to allow Harvey and Gaul to live. The two are exiled to the obscure planet of Terminus, where Harvey is ordered to work on a plan to help salvage humanity once the apocalypse happens. The episode then closes back in the present, where a now grown-up Gaul slowly approaches the vault and touches it. At the end of the opening episode, Gaul hints that the vault is connected to the Foundation, telling us that the monolithic structure might be, in fact, a part of Harvey Seldon's plan. As Harvey outlines during his court proceedings on Trantor, the Foundation is meant to be a repository of all human knowledge, which will survive the apocalypse and pass on the collective learnings of one civilization to the next. According to him, the destruction of the galactic order, and all the worlds under it, is set to occur in the next 500 years. Following this, a dark period of chaos lasting roughly 30,000 years will reign, only after which civilization will restabilize. The plan Harvey proposes is to create a foundation, a repository of knowledge, that will help future civilizations get back on track faster, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. If all goes to plan and the foundation is successfully created, Harvey suggests that the dark period can be reduced from 30,000 years to only 1,000. It is to create this very foundation that Harvey and Gaul are exiled to Terminus by the Galactic Emperor. The devastating attack on Trantor kills millions and destroys many levels of the multi-tiered planet. The timing is suspiciously fortuitous for Harvey and Gaul. Before the attacks, the two are headed to their containment chambers to await execution. Because of these attacks, the two are released, and Harvey even gets granted his wish to create the foundation. To boot, the mathematician does not seem too surprised by the attack either. His hand in the attack may seem logical, but it is not so. Harvey has not shown any destructive tendencies, and has merely maintained his claim of the Empire's fall. Despite being labeled a disturber of the peace, his goal is actually to help salvage humanity. The attacks themselves seem to be the work of the obscure tribes from the far reaches of the galaxy. The two attackers on the Sky Bridge, one with visibly darker skin and the other with glowing blue eyes, seem to match the features of the two tribes, respectively. Therefore, the attack is most likely in response to the Peace Summit and is not connected to Harvey or his plan. Harvey is not surprised by them because his mathematical model has predicted such events happening increasingly frequently as the Galactic Empire plunges into chaos. Therefore, though he couldn't have predicted this particular attack, he knew that a large-scale attack against the Empire was impending. Episode 2 of Foundation begins on the dwarf planet of Ether as soldiers burst into a lab, firing wildly. This happens to be a biohacking facility, and the woman in charge is also responsible for dishing out the explosives used by the bombers during Episode 1's shocking twist. Unfortunately, this raid isn't enough to gain the intel this genetic dynasty need, as they remain in the dark over exactly who orchestrated these attacks. In fact, the other brothers warn that acting too hastily could well have the adverse effect of making martyrs out of any dissidents that Brother Day decides to get rid of. Meanwhile, Gaul continues her mantra of repeating the number sequence aboard their ship. They've got 54 more months until they land on Terminus, and both Rake and Gaul have been hooking up in their free time. Terminus is a difficult and hostile planet too, and simulations don't exactly fill Gaul with confidence, given the mortality rate every time they play. Still, if they want the Foundation to work, they need to be ready to try and defy the odds. After overseeing their progress, Gaul heads back to check on Hari. She feeds back the progress they're making with simulations, as Hari encourages her to sit in on the Foundation budget allocation meeting later on that day. Just before Gaul attends, she engages in an important and cryptic conversation with Rake outside. She admits that Hari's calculations haven't been fully worked out yet, and the puzzle could well change. According to her, there are pieces missing, but enough that it could reshape into a completely different picture. Tensions mount on the ship between Rake and Hari, though, while they sit and eat together. As the latter tells tales of Rake as birth parents, Rake lashes out and comments how Hari's got his history wrong. Back on Tranton, Brother Day continues to try and find those responsible for the bombings. He's convinced that the Anacreon are behind this, especially when one of their women translates the bomber's last words as "Long live the outer reach." Although the pair before him are innocent, Day is dead set on making sure someone pays for this, and if no one else has stepped forward, then he's going to make sure they're found guilty. Disillusioned by the current events, Brother Dusk heads across to see the city's seer, asking just why he was at Hari's trial. Specifically, he questions him about Gaul, wondering if she's a seer too, and has the gift of sight. This plays on his mind back at the palace too, deciding to meet both the Anacreon and the Spin delegates in private. He speaks to them both individually, with the pair reiterating how loyal they are to the Empire. They believe there's someone else out there pulling the strings from the shadows. Having heard enough, Dusk decides to leave but warns that they will die. As he walks out, the camera pans up to show the other brothers watching from a balcony, commenting how he's declining. Brother Day decides to, seize the day and steps up as the strong voice of the Empire. He decides to punish the delegates, regardless of the fact they're innocent. As they're hung for their deeds, this single act looks set to fan the flames of war. As the episode closes out, back aboard the ship bound for Terminus, Gaul walks in on Rake stabbing Hari to death. Given the bad blood between them, he grabs Gaul and throws her in a tank, submerged with water and launching it out to space. As it flies through the void, miraculously dodging all the asteroids in a nearby field, we're left with lots of unanswered questions by the end. 400 years in the past, the first Cleon is watching the construction of the Star Brigade and prepares for his death, and the start of his dynasty of clones. Demerzel tries to reassure him that his legacy will be assured and that he will not be forgotten. While she is a robot, Demerzel is clearly affected by his impending death. In the future, 19 years after the bombing of the Star Bridge, Brother Dusk is now preparing to die watching over Trantor with Demerzel from the same window than Cleoni. Brother Dusk is reflecting on his life, and is wondering if his brothers and him made the right choices about the Spires and Hari Seldon. The youngest brother is now looking as Brother Day did all these years ago, and Brother Day is looking now like Brother Dusk. Brother Dusk shares a last meal with his brothers, and they go see the destruction of the last fragment of the Star Bridge. The new Brother Dawn is born, and Brother Dusk, now Brother Darkness, meet him before going to his death, and is alarmed when he hears the baby cry, fearing something is wrong with him. Demerzel then leads him to his death. The colonists have finally arrived on Terminus and encounter an hostile planet. They find a mysterious artifact which incapacitates them via a null field. The colonists name it the Vault, first seen in the first episode. A few stories circulate about the object, an alien artifact, a surveillance outpost from the Empire. Nobody knows for sure. The colonists settle to the planet and start to build a settlement. A few years later, a child, Salver Harden, is fascinated by the vault and is not affected by it. Once an adult, she becomes the warden of Terminus and protects the colony. Salver is making experiments with the vault and realizes the field is expanding. The colony is now thriving and even has a big statue of Hari Seldon on display. While the work to salvage knowledge is ongoing, Salver shows that not everyone is not a believer in the work of the Foundation. Salver shows Mari that the null field is expanding and that they may have to evacuate the city. Salver thinks the artifact is awakening and it's a sign that trouble is coming. The woman gets a vision of a child who leads her to notice an Anacrian ship in the orbit of the planet. Soon, 3 ships are in orbit and Salver thinks is related to the expanding field is linked to the ships. They try to contact the Empire without success. Salver has a second vision of a child and, after following him, realizes the Anacrian are already on Terminus.
What are you doing here?
Episode 4 begins with narration coupled with a scene. There was once a man, Brother Dawn, that came to Hari Seldon and asked what his fate would be, but Hari told him that the movement of masses can only be measured, and not individuals. Brother Dawn jumps off a building, but feels nothing when he lands due to kinetic energy. Azura watches nearby, which catches Dawn's attention. Episode 4 then flits to Brother Day, and a woman he's acquired for sexual services for 24 hours asks him if it is true that no one can touch him. He dares her to touch him, but when she tries, kinetic energy repels. He asks her to try again, but softer and slower, and they start hooking up. Unfortunately, his moment of intimacy is cut short. An ambassador tells the brothers there's been a death, and there needs to be a successor for the Proxima, but the contest for leadership has been challenged. There's a need to keep the brothers uniformed, which means keeping Brother Dawn up to speed. Meanwhile, on Terminus, Salver tells the Anacrian people that they should not be here, but they ask her to take them to the tower and threaten her. She tells them that she can only take one through the fence, so she does. She escorts the Anacrian closer to the vault, and due to its power, it knocks out the Anacrian unconscious. Salver now has an Anacrian prisoner. Salver tells her parents that the Anacrians claim they are scrappers, but she's hesitant and does not want to alert the others. She asks Hugo for support for the interrogation. Salver notices the Anacrian prisoner has an artificial eye that was caused by the Empire attacking their planet. She wonders if the prisoner's parents died and teases them. Eventually, she senses that the prisoner lost their brother, and they finally break, speaking in their language. Salver tells her parents and Hugo that the prisoner wants to die, and she understood some of what they were saying. The prisoner is a grand huntress of an Anacrian. The Foundation tells Salver to stand down after learning of the prisoner, but Salver reminds them that they are not prepared, and she tells Lewis that she is not screwing up any plan. Lewis tries talking to the Anacrian prisoner and tells them that the Foundation's plans are still ongoing and Hari Seldon's formulas are still in action. Meanwhile, the Anacrians approach the settlement, so Harriet radios Salver for backup. Suddenly, Salver sees visions of a young boy in an Imperial library. The boy threatens her. She then returns to the present, and she tells Hugo that it is the vault she feels it wants her to stay away. Brother Day takes out his anger on the mathematicians for not being able to figure out the work of Hari Seldon for decades. He then tells Dusk to focus on Trantor. Demerzel and Dusk believe they should focus on their principles, but Brother Day states they should not be scared anymore. He blames Dusk for the destruction of 2 plants and the Star Bridge, but he thinks he can save their legacy. Demerzel warns that they cannot act on impulse. Firstly, Salver and Hugo approach the perimeter. The Anacrians are building a flak cannon to try and bring down the energy shield. Meanwhile, the Anacrian prisoner asks Lewis who is in charge. She claims they came to Terminus for items because they are technologically bankrupt, and they are dying since the Empire set their atmosphere on fire. They want to find a new star system and have nothing to lose. Secondly, Salver tells Hugo that she believes that the Anacrians are up to something bigger and that the vault is connected to Hari in the vision. She saw Hari's library in Trantor. Hugo wonders if Salver is part of Hari's plans. The episode ends with Gul Dornick floating in her bubble ship through space. Episode 5 opens with a flashback. Gul wakes up from a nightmare. A massive wave was hurtling towards her. Her mother wakes her as her community on Synax, a planet mostly underwater, is embracing a new child that has been born. After the ceremony, she finds an acquaintance in the community looking through forbidden scriptures with calculations. She warns him not to look at them as they are allowed and are banned by the sleeper. The man warns Gaul that the chaos theory is coming and that all things have a cycle. For his treacherous behavior, the man is thrown into the sea with rocks attached to him. Later on, a curious Gaul heads into the ocean and grabs the book tied to the man. This character had a knack for maths from the beginning. And so, Gaul pursues the knowledge found in the scriptures, and is desperate to enter a maths competition despite her mother's warnings. She does not give up, her fear of the sea levels rising is her motivation. After entering the competition, she receives a hologram message from Harvey, who congratulates her for figuring out the complex equations. He tells her he has studied her solution and wants to offer support. He invites her to Trantor as a guest. Gaul tells her parents that she's been invited to Trantor, and she is who the seers are looking for. Her parents are bitterly disappointed, but the story presents a point of no return for the character. In the present day, Gaul leaves her cryogenic chamber on a ship. She suddenly remembers Harvey getting killed as she levels with her surrounding. At first, she panics, realizing she's trapped in a room on a ship, but then her dagger flies towards the room door, and it unlocks. She attempts to talk to the AI, but she's locked out from most controls and information. She asks if she can send a message to Lewis, but then learns she's in the year 12102. Her cryo session was 34 years. It feels clear that her experiences are not coincidental. The Anacreons are preparing their assault on the outpost back on Terminus while Salver and Hugo wait with bated breath. Salver radios the others, telling them to hold their ground as it is intimidation. She knows the energy shield surrounding them will hold. Suddenly, the Empire shows up with a ship, and Terminus ponders if they are being saved. The commander of the Empire ship wants to speak to Director Lewis, but the comms quickly flits to Salver, who tells the commander that the Anacreons were hoping for an Imperial response. The Anarians soon jam the comms network. Back to Gaul, who continues to battle with the ship's AI. She realizes she's allowed to research with the systems, so she searches for Harvey Seldon's death. It's confirmed that Harvey's niece Rake killed Harvey. It has been determined that Gaul is the accomplice, which rocks her to her core as she was not involved at her. She watches footage of the interrogation of Rake. He told the authorities that Gaul had nothing to do with the murder. To make matters more emotional, Gaul watches the footage for Rake's execution. He left her a subtle message, asking her to continue to solve the puzzle. After a moment of emotional clarity, Gaul gets used to the limited use she can get out of the ship's AI and maps out the galaxy using her impressive mathematical skills. Eventually, she figures out where she is located. However, the AI is restricting Gaul from seeing her destination. Gaul decides to head to the outside of the ship to look for herself, and uses the AI in her helmet. She learns she's heading towards a dark star. She tells the AI that she knows they are heading to Helicon, Harvey's homeworld, so she knows she will be arrested if they believe she is an accomplice to his murder. She then sees a pool of blood nearby, which suddenly disappears. And then, she sees Harvey on the floor, who appears to be flitting in and out of existence and heavily wounded. Is Harvey alive, or is it a hologram? As for the ending of Episode 5 on Terminus, the Anacreon prisoner, the Huntress, lets off a device to bring down the energy shield. Salver is panicking as they are a small outpost, and they are overrun instantly. Salver's mother is captured by the Huntress, so Salver attempts to help. Salver does not fear the threats against her mother's life and refuses to give the Foundation away. She manages to save her mother. Salver fights the Anacreon, but then she's surrounded by more Anacreons. The Huntress tells Salver to watch her world burn as hers did. The Empire ship turns up, and they ask the Anacreons to surrender immediately, but the cannon gun attacks them, and the ship crashes and burns. Salver is in complete shock with the turn of events.